Welcome back to the program. Glad to have you here today. My next guest, Melanie Kurdys, is a board member of the United States Parents Involved in Education, USPIE. We've talked to them many times in the past. Melanie also serves as the president of MIPIE, the Michigan State chapter of that organization. Melanie, thank you for being here.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Steve.
So let's talk about this. The transgender issue is probably the leading cultural issue of our time, in my estimation. And it's something that this administration has said, first of all, they put out an executive order that the United States, the federal government policy will be, they're not involved in any of these radical surgeries or chemical injections, none of this. They'll have nothing to do with it. They will not support it. They'll not support it financially. And yet, we still have schools out there that are promoting this ideology of transgenderism, of all of these things, and in fact, including sex offenders. I mean, to me, it's mind-blowing. Help me to understand what we're hearing here today.
Well, I think the education community has been swept up in this movement, the whole woke movement, and they've grasped onto the critical race theory and the LGBTQ agenda, and they are confident that they ought to be convincing children, persuading children that these are normal behaviors, and to the disappointment and anger of many parents. And the whole point with the report on the Arlington Public Schools that has a public pool that allowed a transgender man in the women's locker room, a registered sex offender. And when it was reported and found out, the superintendent of schools made a point that his school is friendly to this community. He said nothing about the protection of women and children. This is very concerning because you can see that a superintendent of schools who would take that position on something as dangerous as a registered sex offender physically naked in a locker room, what other policies is he endorsing and promoting within that school district?
Right. And so what do you do when you have something like this happen? So what is the offense here? Lay it out for the audience and understand exactly what we're dealing with.
So Arlington Public Schools has a pool, and they have it open to the community. A lot of communities do that. When you're funding them, it makes it easier for them to get approved. But they allowed a transgender man who's a registered sex offender to use the women's locker room indiscriminately, naked in there among the girls and women. And when it was reported, after dragging their feet for a while, the superintendent finally responded that the Arlington Public Schools would be supportive and open to the community. He said nothing in his report about protecting the rights and safety of women and children within his school district.
So what's the outcome now? What have they concluded? I mean, obviously the parents are outraged, and lots of schools have, open gym, open swimming pools, open opportunities, as community centers, all sorts of things. You have kids in there, you have senior citizens in there, you have all sorts of things that go on, right?
Right.
And some of these schools, you would think, would probably say, well, we're inclusive of transgenderism, and so therefore anybody who identifies as a woman can be in the locker room. Your grandmother could be in there. Your grandchild could be in there. Therein lies the problem, right?
Exactly. And like I say, if a superintendent takes the attitude that that community deserves more protection than the vulnerable in his community, what kind of policies is he promoting within the school district that the parents are not yet aware of? We know that there's a lot of promotion of books and lessons in the classroom for as young as kindergartners on transgender, and that it's appropriate and normal. The idea that a boy could become a girl, that a girl could become a boy is normal. And that is appalling to most parents and actually most American citizens based on recent polls, is that it's not an accepted norm in any means. And so the public schools are completely out of control. USPIE actually recommends that you pull your kids out of public schools until they get their act together. Homeschool, private school, there are lots of choices, ways to work around this, but schools cannot be trusted when you have a superintendent who is so blatantly willing to take the side of a registered sex offender over innocent women and girls in the locker room.
Where do you think this leads? I mean, for the most part, I mean, I've thought this for a long time, Melanie. If you put this on the ballot, even in deep blue states, Massachusetts, New York, Illinois, California, and you asked about men being involved in women's sports and transgenderism, it would lose 9-1. I mean, something like this kind of radical ideology, Democrats don't even support this garbage.
Right.
And I said, I look at this, I'm like, why is it so difficult? You know, in Michigan, school districts have a unique opportunity. Most people don't realize this. Since about 2003, a school district can put in a referendum on the ballot that affects only that school district, where you could throw this out in any school district in Michigan. All you have to do is have a school board that has the courage to put it on. That doesn't even need to be reviewed. The school board can approve the language and include it, and school districts across Michigan could begin getting rid of this nonsense immediately. I think we should do that.
Well, it's a very good idea, and I would strongly recommend people to put forth the effort, but we can't be naive. In states where we have seen laws passed, like Indiana, about not teaching critical race theory, diversity, equity, inclusion, not including these lessons in school, you have teachers openly defying the law, saying that they will go to jail. And very few of the laws so far have teeth in them. And those that do, we haven't seen any arrests so far, let alone terminations. So if you're going to do this sort of thing, you have to make sure that your school board or the policy that you pass has teeth in it to enable at least terminations, immediate terminations, or arrests for extreme behavior.
Yeah. So this happened in Virginia, but the problem is it can happen anywhere, right?
That's right.
This can happen anywhere, and we want this to stop. And so how do you stop this indoctrination? How do you stop this? Look, I think a lot of it comes from places like TikTok and social media, and it's normalized. We have this gender dysphoria in percentages and numbers that have never been seen before, and that comes down to one thing to me, and that's advertising. It's being promoted as something that's normal and inclusive, and it's not. It's poisonous to young minds. Where am I wrong?
Oh, no, you're absolutely right. But in order to change the culture, which is really what we have to do, we have to bring the pendulum back. And thank goodness we have President Trump setting the stage and passing these rules that take away the normalization of it. And we have to build our confidence. You know, people were afraid on social media to speak out against these agendas because they would be attacked and ridiculed and possibly even prosecuted by
canceled. Canceled.
Right.
You'd be
Right.
deplatformed, silenced. Your accounts would be destroyed. But the fact of the matter is, we don't need to change the culture. That's what I just said, Melanie. Even Democrats don't support this. They don't.
Right.
And so you've got a little radical fringe somewhere that has hijacked and exploited the LGBT community. They had 47 letters after the fact that, God, they don't even know what half of them mean. I don't. I'll be honest. I don't know. You know, I don't know what all those letters mean. I don't know how it's possible to keep up with all these things. 65 genders? No. You don't get to spin the wheel and choose. So I don't think the culture changed. I think that we need to reel in where they have gone wrong. I'll give you the last word, Melanie.
Well, I just want to say I agree with you in general of culture, but for some reason they had undue influence and too much power, and we have to take that away and go back to normalizing, you know, boys are boys, girls are girls, and you stay in your lane.
I agree with that. Melanie Kurdys, board member, United States Parents Involved in Education, USPIE. She also serves as the president of MIPIE, which is the Michigan chapter of USPIE. Melanie, I really appreciate you being here. I think that we are going to get this corrected with this administration, and with parents rejecting this across the country, from Virginia to Michigan and all points across America. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Really appreciate it. All right, look, you can weigh in too. Go to stevegruber.com, send me an email. What do you think about this? What do you think about this conversation, this topic? Are we getting our country back? I believe we are, but it's going to be work. Don't kid yourself. I'll be right back. It's the Steve Gruber Show.